Thank you for joining us. My name is Evelise Burgos from the Ombudsman Office in Atlantic Caymay County Superior Court. Meet the Live is a weekly series of webinars via Zoom to inform the public about a variety of topics, court programs, services, and more. The presentation today will provide general information and feature a Q&A at the end. You may submit general and non-case specific questions at any point via the Q&A function in the Zoom app, and our speaker will address them at the end as long as time permits. This is a Zoom webinar, so your cameras and microphone will not be usable. Also, please note, this is a product of Atlantic and Caymay County Superior Court of New Jersey, and some information may only be unique to this county. Please check with your own county for any specific information. Today's presentation will cover restraining orders and will be presented by subject matter expert Lillian Pagan, and we hope you enjoyed today's session. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lillian Pagan. I am the Domestic Violence Team Leader here in Atlantic County. Welcome and thank you for your interest in learning about restraining orders in our vicinage. You ask, what is a restraining order? A restraining order is a judicial order which bars someone from having contact with you and can provide other relief, such as child custody, parenting time, child support, and may provide protection to other members of your household. A temporary restraining order, which we call TRO, is in effect until a judge has a hearing and can speak to both parties. A final or permanent restraining order is in effect permanently until a judge grants the victim's request to vacate this order or dismiss the order, or the defendant may also make an application to vacate the restraining order in place. You can request a domestic violence restraining order if you and the person you're filing against are or were married, are living together or have previously lived together, have ever been involved in a dating relationship, or have a child in common. Currently, there are 19 criminal acts covered under the domestic violence law. Next slide, please. So where and how can you apply for a domestic violence restraining order? You can come into the Superior Court building in Atlantic City, located at 1201 Bacharach Boulevard. We are on the first floor, room 130. Currently, we also take applications for temporary restraining orders over the telephone by calling 609-402-0100, extension 47580 for Atlantic, or extension 47710 for Cape May. You can come into the building Monday through Friday between the hours of 8:30 and 4:30 p.m. On weekends and holidays, you may request a temporary restraining order from your local police department. Just please be assured that you will have access to file an order of protection 24 hours if needed. Next slide. The application process. In person, as I mentioned before, you can come to the Domestic Violence Unit located in Atlantic City Superior Court building from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. You will be handed an application to fill out demographic information for yourself, the person you're filing against, and if there are children in common, we will need the children's information. After you hand in your application, there will be an interview. You will meet either in person or by telephone, with a probation officer in the domestic violence unit. They will ask specific questions about the alleged incidents being reported. Please understand that this information is necessary for a probation officer to prepare the document that the judge or the hearing officer will be reviewing in order to get a better understanding of what the situation is, and so that we can have a clear document to present in court. You will be required to give dates and times of incidents currently, and then we will also ask you questions about prior history of domestic violence. Once the application is completed and the complaint is generated in our system, the person doing their interview will review the information provided by the plaintiff at that time to ensure that it is accurate. Once that process is completed, that complaint gets forwarded to a domestic violence hearing officer or a judge. You will have a hearing with one of those people to go over the information provided. Please understand that at that point, there is no need to present any evidence. The determination for the entry of a temporary restraining order at that point will be determined based on the victim's testimony. If a restraining order is granted, you will have a date assigned to come back to court for a final restraining order hearing. If the restraining order is granted, you will receive a copy of that order before the end of the business day. If you're here in person, it will be handed to you in person. If you are starting this process by telephone, the signed order will be emailed to you. And a copy of that order will be provided to the law enforcement agency where the defendant resides for service. And by service, we mean they have to receive a copy of the paperwork that was filed so that they know what they're being accused of. Understand that the court officer who does your interview cannot tell you what you should include on your complaint, and we do not have the authority to tell you what constitutes domestic violence. We simply just take the details of the incidents and prepare a document for the judge or the hearing officer. Next slide, please. As I stated before, the temporary restraining order directs you to come back to court for a final restraining order. The plaintiff will be given that date on the record by the person who grants the restraining order. It will be printed on the document itself. Final restraining orders in Atlantic County are heard in person with a very limited number of remote hearings being conducted, and those are only for special circumstances. Understand that a final hearing is set up similar to what a trial would be like. You will give testimony on the information that was provided at the time the temporary restraining order was issued. The person being accused will have an opportunity to present their version of the facts as well. At that point, the judge will allow the parties to present any evidence, and each party can question one another about the evidence being presented and the testimony being presented. you will be able to present witnesses at that hearing. And your witnesses must appear in person unless it's a virtual hearing. Understand that we cannot accept any written statements from the witnesses. They must be able to be questioned on the record about the information they are providing. Ultimately, after reviewing evidence and testimony, the judge will make a determination on whether a permanent restraining order will be issued or whether that case is going to be dismissed. If a final restraining order is issued, the judge may order the defendant to pay a domestic violence fee. The amount to be paid will be determined by the judge hearing the case. At that point, if a final restraining order is issued, the defendant will have to be processed for a national database known as the Domestic Violence Central Registry. And they will be ordered to provide fingerprints. Next slide. At any point after the temporary restraining order is issued, or even after the final restraining order is issued in court, the plaintiff has a right to request a dismissal of their case. The request to dismiss must be filed in person or via email. Once staff processes that certification for dismissal, you will be set up for a telephonic hearing with the judge. The plaintiff will have an opportunity to amend their complaint prior to their final restraining order hearing if there were any details that were left out of the original complaint filed. And that process will also, there's an application that you will have to fill out either in person or via email. Once a defendant is served with a temporary restraining order, they have a right to file an appeal of that complaint. That appeal application gets forwarded to a judge for review, and the judge can review it on the papers, meaning that they will only make their decision based on what's written on that application. Or if it's an emergent situation, the judge may choose to reach out to both parties and have a hearing prior to the original final order date given. The judge has the right to make changes to the reliefs granted at the time the TRO was entered. Once a final order is put in place, either party has a right to request to amend the reliefs on that order. The parties also have a right to file to appeal the judge's decision if they don't agree with the decision the judge made. An appeal must be filed within 45 days of the entry of the final restraining order, and that process is done through the appellate division in Trenton. Recently, New Jersey added what's known as VASPA protection, which is known as Victims Assistance and Survivors Protection Act. This law went into effect as of January 1st, 2024, and it extends protection to victims of stalking and cyber harassment who do not meet the relationship criteria for a regular domestic violence complaint. The way we process these applications is that for the initial filing, it must be done here in person at the Superior Court or via the judicial electronic filing system. Unfortunately, the police department at this point does not have the ability to process a complaint for a VASPA protective order. If you need more information about VASPA, you can certainly contact the Domestic Violence Unit for more information. Along with the temporary restraining orders, final restraining orders, and VASPA cases, there's a different caseload that may result as a result of charges filed for violation of a restraining order. Those cases are contempt of court matters, which are considered quasi-criminal. Those cases will start with the local police department filing charges against the defendant named on the order. And after being reviewed by the prosecutor's office, the cases are usually remanded to family division, which means that one of our judges here in the Superior Court, Family Court, will be the one to hear and make a determination on the outcome of that case. Because a lot of our interaction with our litigants, our court users, have to do after the restraining order is issued, it's very important that anyone involved with the court keeps the court updated with phone numbers, changes in email addresses, and mailing addresses. Very often, dates can change. Court calendars have to be rearranged, and we need to send out notice by mail. We try to contact everyone by telephone if possible, or we even may reach out to you by email. So again, it's super important to keep the court updated of your personal information, your contact information. Once again, you will have access to file for a restraining order 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether you choose to come to the Superior Court building or you choose to go to your local police department. On the screen, I have provided the contact number for the Atlantic County and Cape May County Domestic Violence Unit. The number to reach us, the main number is the same, 609-402-0100. Atlantic County is extension 47580. And for Cape May County is extension 47710. There's a lot of information provided to the public on the court's website. There's also translation for documents that you may want to inquire about if you have any questions. It's a very good source for you to access. And that is it. If you have any questions, I'm free.
The chat's now open. If anyone does have any questions, we'll get a minute or so, and then we can see if we have any open. Doesn't look like any are coming in. I'll move to the next slide. If another one comes up, I'll go back to it. Okay, so thank you for watching today's presentation, and thank you to Lilian Pagan and Richard, our Spanish interpreter. We would like to receive feedback on this program. Using the QR code on the screen, please take a moment to answer a brief survey about today's program. You will receive a link via the email after the session ends, as well as flyers for remaining webinar topics. If you're looking for more information on this series, please contact the Ombudsman office at the email address shown above. Thank you all. This concludes the restraining order presentation. We